The Iran war is back on. For how long, we don't know. Well, we do know mediators are scrambling to restart peace talks while the new Air Force One is swapped out for the old one because of security concerns. Graham Platner is out of the Maine Senate race. At least 7 Democrats now vying for the nomination. One of them, Jordan Wood, joins us. A New York high-rise being converted from office space to apartments buckles, prompting evacuations. Will that destabilize other conversions nationwide? We're going to explore that. Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Let me welcome you to the Takeout. Escalation, that is the word of the day in the Middle East. U.S. attacks are more numerous than at any stage of the long-running and long-fragile ceasefire. Iran fired retaliatory missiles at a U.S. base in Jordan. Those missiles were intercepted. Related, we have new reporting about why President Trump did not use the new Air Force One gifted by the Qatari government when he left the NATO summit in Ankara, Turkey. It had to do in part with security precautions and the range of Iranian missiles. We will have more on both those important stories shortly. But first, a quote. As an American, I condemn a Republican fascist just as much as I condemn a Democrat communist. They're equally dangerous to you and me and to our country. As an American, I want to see our nation recapture the strength and unity it once had when we fought the enemy instead of ourselves, unquote. Those words spoken on the Senate floor June 1st, 1950. By Maine Republican Senator Margaret Chase Smith, one of the most consequential women in American politics. The speech was called Declaration of Conscience, and it indirectly denounced the demagoguery that had come to define Republican Senator Joe McCarthy's anti-communist crusade. Chase Smith acknowledged in her remarks that McCarthy's tactics were, at that time, popular, but she warned of deeper dangers. I do not want to see, Chase said, the Republican Party ride to political victory on the 4 horsemen of calumny: fear, ignorance, bigotry, and smear. It was a brave speech, well ahead of public sentiment, but vindicated 4 years later when the Senate censured McCarthy. Chase Smith was the first woman ever to serve in the U.S. House and U.S. Senate, and the first woman to have her name placed in nomination for president by a major party. That happened at the 1964 Republican Convention. Here's the modern-day tie-in. Republican Susan Collins occupies the Senate seat once held by Chase Smith. Until last night, Graham Platner was the Democratic nominee seeking to unseat Collins. He exited the race after a credible allegation surfaced that he raped a former romantic partner. Platner denied the accusation, but his political support collapsed. Last night, he released an exit video, and history will not for 1 second compare it to Chase Smith's oratory.
It's not the false allegations, though, that have brought us to where we are. It's the fact that they are being used by the political establishment to put structural pressure on us. We live in a political system that is not built for normal people. It is a system that is built structurally to make sure that movements like ours cannot flourish. That if they begin to succeed, they can be crushed.
To be clear, the system did not render Platner unelectable. His past conduct did. Maine, as Chase Smith and Collins make abundantly clear, welcomes women in politics. Maine Democrats searching frantically right now for a nominee to replace Platner. 7 candidates, including 2 women, have entered a mad dash process to produce a nominee by the state's July 27th deadline. On the hero watch or heroine watch for us in Maine, Caitlin Huey-Burns. CHB, take it from there.
What a lead-in, Major. I mean, to continue the Bonnie Tyler lyrics, total eclipse of the heart, every now and then I fall apart. That is pretty much what the Democratic Party here in Maine is feeling right now. They are still in a state of chaos because Graham Platner announced he's suspending his campaign last night, but he still hasn't officially filed the paperwork that he has to put forward by Monday at 5 p.m. in order to set off this new process. And we're told by sources today that he actually told his staffers yesterday he's not planning to file that paperwork until the very last minute on Monday. So there's already anxiety within the Democratic Party right now over what has happened. And now there is a real mad dash to figure out a candidate to replace him. And the state Democratic Party said yesterday they are going to hold a nominating convention. They're not even sure what that will look like right now. They're trying to figure out the details of who's eligible, what is required, when exactly it will happen. Mark your calendars. July 27th is the date that the party has to pick who will be the nominee. And Major, we've been talking to voters over the past few days here in Maine, many of whom were supportive of Platner originally, who are wondering themselves what this will all look like and whether, in fact, they can actually field a candidate who can take on and defeat Susan Collins, who has had that seat, as you mentioned, for 30 years. This was always going to be an uphill battle for Democrats, just given her longtime incumbency of Collins. But they were looking to tap into this populist, this restive base of the Democratic Party that Platner had activated. So Democrats here now are in a position where they're shunning Platner. He's in their rear view. But they also need his voters. And so that is the needle that they are trying to thread here. And you've already had a host of candidates throw their names into the ring here. And the question is whether they can translate the support for Platner on policy into a winning campaign that can activate voters and bring new voters into the fold that may not have otherwise been engaged.
Caitlin Huey-Burns coming to us from Portland, Maine. Thank you so very much. Maine Democrat Jordan Wood has jumped into the race to replace Platner, and he joins us now. So, Jordan, you ran for the Senate, you dropped out, then you ran for the House and finished third. So let me just ask you, with that as a backdrop, why you now?
Well, we're coming out of a primary here with a number of candidates that received over 20,000 votes in the primary. And I think all of them should be considered. And we need an open and transparent process so that the voters have trust that the nominee coming out of that is one that they support, that they know is representing our values, our priorities, the change people want to see in Washington, but also is the best candidate to beat Susan Collins. And I believe I am that candidate.
Do you have any regrets about backing Platner?
Well, you played the clip from Margaret Chase Smith, the hero of mine, and she reminds us what courage looks like. The slogan of our campaign has always been "Maine needs courage, not concern," and she informs that a lot. Last October, I had called on Graham Platner to leave this race because I knew he had lied to us about several things around the Reddit posts and his tattoo. I was forced out of that race because of that decision. And I think it's a reminder courage is not easily seen when you are speaking against your enemies or the opposing party. It is only seen when you are talking to your own side. And that's what sacrifice looks like. I think it's a moment that we need more leaders that are sacrificing and giving up power or whatever position they have for the people and for our democracy.
And Jordan, what is your reaction to what Caitlin Huey-Burns just reported, which is Graham Platner does not intend to officially, meaning sign the necessary documents until Monday to get out of this race?
Disappointing isn't enough. I think that it is so important that, he should have dropped out on Monday and let this process unfold. The way that he and some of his advisors are trying to control the process and pick a nominee is exactly the wrong thing to do, to have the public and voters who are deeply betrayed and hurt by Graham right now, they are the ones in control of our elections, of our democracy, and who is moving forward. We've got to all coalesce behind that candidate.
And you mentioned the process. Jordan, do you understand what the process is actually going to be? And if you are not successful, will you campaign with the nominee?
Absolutely. I mean, I think this is all about making sure we have the strongest candidate to take on Susan Collins. In terms of the process, as I understand it, Maine has 16 counties. We have very well organized, great county parties. I've had town halls in all of these counties in the past year, and we'll select 500 delegates and some alternates that will have a convention and vote on the candidates that have put themselves forward and collected the signatures to be considered. I think what we need to see from candidates, this is my strategy, is that there needs to be a campaign, yes, directly for these delegates, but more broadly to the public, because we are just firmly committed to democracy in our state. It's bipartisan, and the people that are going to go to the convention, wherever it is, are going to be there to represent their communities, their families, their friends, their counties, and are going to take very seriously what that responsibility is. And they'll be hearing from their neighbors. So it is, yes, a campaign on this smaller group of people, but really broadly a campaign across the state, so that the public feels like we are making the right decision and that they're having their voices heard by these delegates.
And Jordan, for my audience's benefit, just explain what you're personally going to do. Are you going to be driving all around the great state of Maine? I mean, how do you reach people when you have so little time to try to make your case?
Yeah, I'm starting town halls on Monday. I mentioned we've had 40 of them in the past year. I think that's where we start, but also our campaign has over 200,000 followers across social media platforms. That has been a great way for us to engage voters of all ages, and we'll continue to do that, communicating directly to the people and making sure that they know that this is their decision. This is not Chuck Schumer's or Graham Platner's, the DNC, the DSCC. This is what the Maine people need to decide, and they need to hear from all of these candidates. I just as an example, I mean, I'm the only candidate right now being considered that even has a real website that voters can go see what their positions are and what their policy priorities will be and where they stand on all these issues. Those are the things that we need candidates to do very quickly if they are stepping forward and putting themselves up for consideration.
One last question, Jordan. There are, as I mentioned, 7 announced candidates. How do you differentiate from the other 6 quickly?
I'm the only candidate to be considered that actually has worked in Congress. I was the chief of staff. I think that matters going up against Susan Collins. I was also born and raised right here in Lewiston. I'm raising my family in Lewiston, Auburn. I'm a millennial. I was in second grade when Susan Collins was first elected. I think that contrast is matter and is fundamentally important to beating Susan Collins. And so I would not put myself up for consideration if I didn't think, one, that I was the best candidate to do it, but also the right contrast.
Jordan Wood, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Major.
Joining me now here at the family table, CBS News Homeland Security correspondent Nicole Skanga for more on her new reporting about security concerns about the Qatari jet that was given over to President Trump and converted into the brand new Air Force One. Also with us, CBS News national security contributor Sam Vinograd, who may weigh in on that, but we'll certainly lean on her as we frequently do about the latest activity with the Iran war. But Nicole, let's start with you. What do we know?
Major, let's talk about what we know and what we don't know. So what we know is
what people are not saying.
Yes, the Secret Service advised President Trump to leave Turkey on the older Air Force One instead of this new Qatari-donated plane, often referred to as the bridge plane, that he had flown into Ankara. We know that the older Air Force One has long established secure communications, sophisticated defensive systems, what is called diversion technology, established to misdirect incoming missiles. We know the decision was also tied to ensuring that the president could manage the Iranian conflict from the air if needed, that the old Air Force One has in essence, a secure airborne command center, much like a situation room in the air. We also know that this decision would not have been made without sign-off from the White House military office, the likes of Brigadier General Garrett Hoffman, as well as his military aide. Now, what we don't know is exactly what the newer Qatari-donated Boeing 747-8 has in terms of capabilities and does not have. And part of the reason we're not hearing exactly what it does not have is, of course, many of the officials and sources we're speaking to have concerns about national security as well as the president's own protective security. But it does raise several important questions moving forward, like will the president keep that new Qatari-donated Air Force One on future travel? Is he going to only use it in lower risk environments? And is this sort of a one-time precaution during the Iranian conflict, or does it point to broader concerns about perhaps how the construction and equipment of this new Air Force One was hurried along over the past year? Lest we forget, it usually takes 6 to 10 years to build an Air Force One style military plane. This one was outfitted in, I believe, just a year.
Right. And the president said the quiet part out loud yesterday. He's the number one target from Iran. And then this switch occurred, which at least indicates that there was something of concern and this older plane was better equipped. That seems to be a rational conclusion.
And what we seem to be hearing from sources is while it wasn't one specific credible threat, the president has faced a series of credible threats in the past from Iran and other foreign adversaries, and that we are now in new territory amid this ongoing war. And by the way, a deteriorating ceasefire.
Sam, you've been on Air Force One. You have been part of these conversations with the U.S. president. Your thoughts?
Let's put this in the never have I ever category. Never have I ever heard that a U.S. president flew on an Air Force One plane. There are multiple, by the way, on an Air Force One plane. And then security officials said, actually, it's not that secure. Let's put you on an old one. So never have I ever heard that before. And I really hope I don't again, because Boeing refers to the Air Force One fleet as a flying Oval Office. Not only does the Air Force One fleet have ongoing connectivity, it has these advanced security protocols. It has 4,000 square feet of interior space. It is basically not just a flying Oval Office, a flying White House. And it is also self-sufficient, and this is really important. The actual Air Force One fleet can refuel in air. They don't need, even if they have to make an emergency stop, they don't need help from partnering governments. They're self-sufficient. And now we have a situation where we have a plane that was donated from a foreign government, was used by foreign officials, had been on foreign soil, and ostensibly, the White House cut corners to try to get this operational on, frankly, an unrealistic timeline. And as a security official, I take a step back and say, why would you want to rush something as important as not just the president's safety, but over 100 other people that are flying with the president that are really critical to our national security?
Now, the president flew back on that Qatari-donated Air Force One from England, but that is clearly a much safer, lower profile, lower risk situation. Sam, in about less than 2 minutes we have, talk about what we have seen in the headlines today with the Iran conflict and strikes back and forth.
What we've seen is a resumption of this tit-for-tat reciprocal trading of fire. We've seen the United States,
but at an elevated level.
Certainly at an elevated level across a broader range of targets, a faster pace, and the United States has conducted those strikes throughout various parts of Iran, really concentrating to a large degree on the coastal areas, but then moving inland. And Iran has, like it has in the past, escalated attacks against Bahrain and Kuwait, where CBS reporting and other outlets have reported the U.S. had started moving folks back in, both in terms of military personnel, diplomats. I've spoken to oil companies that have also kind of resurged their personnel on the ground because we thought the ceasefire was in effect. So we've seen this resumption of fire between the two countries, as well as really an escalation in targeting, while, importantly, our traditional mediators, Qatar, as well as other countries like Turkey and Saudi Arabia, are trying to say to both sides, let's take a beat, let's try to negotiate.
They're trying really hard to do that.
They're trying really hard, but at this point, the question is, where is their credibility and confidence by either party that anyone's committed to the ceasefire? Certainly, Iran was striking commercial vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. And even before that, the actual control of the Strait of Hormuz was not what President Trump laid out verbally. It was really Iran trying to call the shots, literally and figuratively.
Sam Vinograd, Nicole Skanga, thank you so very, very much. Still to come. Could one buckling New York high-rise freeze the nationwide push to increase housing stock by converting unused office space to apartments? We're going to take a look at that. Also, premiums for the Affordable Care Act coverage. They're on the rise, while enrollment is declining. A closer look at the possibly wobbly state of Obamacare. Plus, the pastor of an unauthorized Christian church and online ministry in China recently freed after being jailed for months by Chinese authorities. President Trump played a role in his release, and his daughter joins us. The Takeout returns in 90 seconds. Welcome back to the Takeout. A structurally compromised building, a high-rise in Midtown Manhattan, is now been stabilized. But the incident may complicate the trend of converting high-rise office space into residential apartments. The Wall Street Journal reports future developments could face issues such as increased safety reviews and more expensive insurance. These types of projects are up 28% from last year. This is in part because of high mortgage rates. Freddie Mac today announced the average 30-year fixed mortgage is almost 6.5%. Neil Osno is joining us now. He is the founder of the Persistence Analytics Group, an infrastructure and risk analytics firm. And I'm told, good sir, this is your first time on television, so don't be nervous. You have a very casual look about you, which fits the vibe of this show perfectly. So just tell me what you know about this space, what's going on, and what may have happened in New York that could slow things down.
Thank you. Major, thanks again for having me. The key point is simple. A high-rise to residential conversion is not just a real estate story. It's an implementation test. You know, a conversion thesis is not the same thing as an executable building. So cities have too much obsolete office space, not enough housing, and a strong political desire to turn vacancy into vitality. That makes sense, but these buildings were designed for office occupancy, office floor plates, office mechanical systems, office elevators, office plumbing, office fire, life safety assumptions, and office financing. The question is not just can we convert into offices into housing? The question is which buildings can actually survive the conversion math?
And when you talk about the conversion math, what makes it so complicated and what makes it a requirement that you take stock of all the various things that could go wrong?
Right. See, in these times we're moving so fast, we overlook some of the assumptions, and that's why incidents like this happen. So the market likes the headline. So the market is really just feeding off of the headline. But empty offices become housing, but the structure has to prove it can hold. So that means verifying the physical conversion, the capital stack, the insurance, the code, neighborhood absorption, the utilities, and execution risk. So this is not just an adaptive reuse, it's an assumption verification.
And Neil, when you saw what happened in New York with the formerly Pfizer building, did any of that surprise you? Did you think maybe corners were cut, or there just were poor assumptions about what could actually be converted?
You know, I'm not here to speculate, but the gap that I found that cuts across more than just this sector, I would have to say that people are just operating off of bad assumptions, and they got caught.
And Neil, is this, from your perspective, a workable idea, meaning it's a good idea, we just need to be more serious about it? And if we're not serious about it, it could slow down. And even if we are serious about it after New York, insurance rates are going to probably be higher and political scrutiny will probably be more intense.
You know, I'm digging into this the same as the market is right now. But so, like, I think that cities shouldn't just subsidize the conversions because the office vacancy number is scary. I think they should create a fast verification screen before public money, tax incentives, zoning relief, or financing support goes in. I think that the cities have to ask, is the building physically convertible? What's the true cost per unit? What code upgrades are required? What public infrastructure is needed? What subsidy is being requested? Who bears the downside if the project stalls? Is the housing actually deliverable? So I don't think it's much about slowing it down, but actually just doing more diligence so incidents like this don't happen. It's great that they want to be proactive and they see this tremendous opportunity, but let's just do it the right way.
Neil Osnato, I botched your name the first time, proving that I can be fallible on television. You, sir, were great on television. I thank you for your time and your expertise.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Still to come on the Takeout, recordings from Tyler Robinson's roommate played in court. What prosecutors say they reveal about the alleged Charlie Kirk assassin. back to the Takeout. Welcome to the Conversation Corner. Here's a look at what else we and now you are watching this evening. In today's pretrial hearing, prosecutors revealed that Tyler Robinson's former roommate told law enforcement that the alleged Charlie Kirk assassin expressed regret for that shooting. Utah prosecutors shared taped testimony from Lance Twiggs, who was also Robinson's romantic partner. This is what he told law enforcement on April 20th.
Didn't go into detail. I just asked him in person if what he said was true the night before, and he said it was. I started crying a little bit and said he wishes he hadn't done it, and then kept going around and just doing stuff, I think, to keep himself busy or distracted or something.
Twiggs was given immunity for the statements he gave to law enforcement. Former U.S. Olympian David Hearn pleaded not guilty today to vandalism charges related to damages at the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool. Hearn said he was only curious about the reflecting pool and briefly touched something inside of it. Here was his attorney, Norm Eisen, who talked to reporters after.
If Mr. Hearn can be charged with a felony for touching the reflecting pool, every American is at risk. This indictment reflects the administration's effort to scapegoat Davy and to shift blame for their own failures.
Hearn was released on his own recognizance. He faces up to 10 years in prison if convicted. New federal data show Affordable Care Act enrollments are down nearly 3 million from last year. Premiums jumped at the start of 2026 after Congress let COVID-era federal subsidies expire. Dr. Celine Gounder joins us to discuss. Dr. Gounder, always good to have you on the program. Talk about the relationship here between premiums going up and enrollments going down.
Well, for 4 years, federal subsidies capped what people paid for their coverage, and those enhanced tax credits expired January 1st. This is what that government shutdown last fall was all about, was a fight over these tax credits. So overnight, the average payment jumped by about 58%, and deductibles rose by about $1,000. So more than 90% of enrollees had help. And now that that help has vanished, many cannot afford their plan.
Okay, so they're no longer covered. That does not mean, however, they no longer get sick.
I wish it worked that way, right? But unfortunately, when people can't afford health coverage, they also are very much at risk for not getting care on time. A lot of people will delay, they'll show up later and sicker, which also means probably more expensive. And my colleagues at KFF found that even among those who renewed their insurance, 73% of them worried about being able to afford a hospital stay. So that's despite having signed up for insurance. People are really, really worried about the cost of health insurance.
And we've discussed this before, Dr. Gounder, but it's worth reminding my audience. Insurance, in whatever context, is a pooled entity. And when healthier people get out of the pool, that means sicker people are still there, which means there could be higher insurance premiums even later this year, if I understand that correctly.
Yeah, it's what experts call the death spiral. So as people leave the health insurance marketplace because maybe they're healthier and they don't think they really need it, in general, what ends up happening is you have people who are sicker and costlier who stick around, and then the insurance companies increase their rates because those people who are left, you have a concentration of risk. And then because the rates go up, even more people leave. So that spiral continues. And the way the Affordable Care Act was originally written was to prevent that kind of spiral from happening. But over the years, different aspects of that have been chipped away at, and those protections are no longer there.
So Congress let these expire, Dr. Gounder. That means Congress could, if it changed its mind, reinstitute them at some level. And as I understand it, New Mexico is a state that offers some clarity about what happens if you sustain these subsidies.
That's right. So there's a Senate proposal from Susan Collins and Bernie Moreno, so both Republican senators, who would restore the credits for 2 years. That proposal is getting bipartisan support. And as you say, there is proof that this works. When you make health insurance more affordable for people, they are more likely to enroll. In New Mexico, they replaced the lost federal subsidies with state money. It's the only state to have done this, and it's the only state where enrollment rose.
Dr. Celine Gounder, always a pleasure. Thank you. Next, a pastor detained in China since last fall, recently released from custody right before 4th of July, as a matter of fact. His daughter joins us here in the Conversation Corner to discuss that story and his ongoing fight for religious freedom and the freedom of those still held in captivity in China. You're watching The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. Same Conversation Corner, different chair. The pastor of a prominent underground, and we'll define underground in a second, church in China, is in the United States quite happily with his family after being released following detention of more than 250 days. Pastor Ezra Jin has been under scrutiny by Beijing authorities since 2018 for his leadership of the Zion Church, one of the largest churches not registered with Chinese authorities. That's what makes it an underground church, not registered. He was taken into custody in October 2025 as part of a sweeping government crackdown of religious activity within China. Jin was later charged with, quote, illegally using information networks for broadcasting his sermons on the internet. The pastor's release came less than 2 months after President Trump brought his case up to President Xi Jinping in China during his visit to Beijing. Upon his release, Jin wrote an op-ed piece for the Wall Street Journal that expressed his concerns for those still in captivity within China, titled, I'm Free, Now Pray for China. Joining me now is Pastor Ezra Jin's daughter, human rights activist Grace Jin Drexel. Grace, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tell me how your father's doing. And you were with him when he came back.
Yes.
What was that like?
I mean, it was just so incredible. We were told that there could be a possibility that something would happen, and we were just counting down the hours. It was like 24 hours and then 12 hours and then 8 hours, and every day I would be texting people like, is everything still happening? Is something still happening? And when I saw him, I still felt like it was unbelievable. Like, is that him? And honestly, he looked so different when I saw him. He was much thinner. His hair was all gone, and I've just never seen him in this way. It took a couple of seconds for me to realize that it was my father still. But it was just so much emotion that was pent up for the last 8 or 9 months, and seeing him there just was incredible, and we're so grateful that he is out.
Was he emotional too?
Yeah, he definitely was. I think he was also a little bit shocked. He didn't even know where he was going when they took him out of the prison. He was just shoved into a car and then sent from the car to the train to the airplane, and then all of a sudden he was in the U.S. And so he didn't have a chance to say anything, take anything. He couldn't even bring his socks out of the prison. He had nothing. And the prison guards sent him just a pair of clothes. And that was all he had. And he arrived in the U.S.
Does he appear to you in reasonably good health?
I think in some ways, I mean, we don't know what we expected. I mean, it's been a long time. I've never really met anyone who just came out of a Chinese prison either. So we were not sure what to expect. I think he is in some ways much better than we expected.
But lost weight.
A lot of weight. And even sometimes when he walks, he's a little like wobbly, and we're just still trying to understand how he is doing. There are days when he can't sleep, and then there are days when he like sleeps the whole time, and we're just also figuring out his health conditions and how he's doing just emotionally as well.
And talk to me about the concerns he has, very deep concerns about those still in prison.
Yeah, definitely.
For the same offense or a related one.
Yeah, I mean, the church was initially shut down, and they arrested around close to 30 church leaders initially, and now 8 of them still remain in prison. And many of them, they knew me since I was an awkward kid in high school, and now I am a mother of 3 kids, and they're like family to me as well. And many of them, 8 of them, are still in prison. And even after my father was released, there was a feeling of this tenseness that I can't feel fully excited until I know everyone is really. I mean, don't get me wrong, we're so grateful and so happy that my father is here. It still doesn't feel real, but it also we're just still thinking and praying for the other 8 as well, and we're hoping that they will that this joyful moment will soon be felt by more people, including those 8 family members.
In my reading about this, Grace, your father and his church is not anti-government. It's not anti the Communist Party in China. It just wants to exist and spread the gospel of Christ as they see it.
Yeah. I mean, my father, he became a Christian in a very extraordinary circumstance when he was in college, and that was when it was June 4th, and he had a very coming to Jesus moment, basically after
Tiananmen Square.
Yeah, after right? Tiananmen Square, and so he is not. He knows what the situation is in China, but he feels like as a pastor, he wants people to feel the love and hope that he felt since he became a Christian. And that was his main task that he felt like his role was in China, to be the pastor, to be to helping the weak and the vulnerable, to show the love of Christ. And even for that, increasingly, so many pastors, like I said, including the 8 that are still detained, but hundreds of pastors currently are still being detained in China. And so we really hope, we hope and pray that this goodwill, this energized moment will continue to spread, and more people will be released in China as well.
After the church was shut down, it went on the internet and became more visible and more popular, which was probably one of the problems the Chinese authorities saw. Grace Jen Drexel, thank you very much for coming in. I appreciate it so very much. We're going to take a quick break. Please stay with us. You're watching and very much enjoying The Takeout. Welcome back. Ain't it exciting? It is for me. Political panel time. Republican strategist Mark Bednar, Democratic strategist, and CBS News contributor Chuck Rocha. Chuck, let me quote from you.
Oh, this
June
is never
1st,
good. This is
Politico.
Never good. Here we go.
The thing that bothers me about Graham, that would be Graham Platner, is every week it seems like it's something else. I worry because I have the scars of trying to beat Susan Collins for many cycles. Give me your take on the Platner implosion.
Seems like I might have seen this coming. Look.
As the kids say, that one ages well.
There's a reason why 47 people in Maine decided to run for Maine, and none of them wanted to run for the U.S. Senate, because Susan Collins is not easy to beat. She's been there for 30 years. Yeah. But there's also something happening in Maine, whether it's Graham Platner or somebody else, of a lot of anxiety that's happening around the country. It's just more prolific in Maine. It's one of the few states that Kamala Harris carried that was a state that also voted for a few Republicans. So it's prime opportunity. It's the most prime for us.
Has that opportunity been squandered?
No. Just because people are so mad. It still makes it much harder. Mm-hmm. I'll give that to any Republican out there, but there's still a chance a Democrat could win here.
Okay. I'm going to skip on to other topics, Mark, because I'm sure you have thoughts, but I think I can imagine what they're going to be. I want to play a soundbite from Marsha Blackburn, currently in the Senate, running for governor in Tennessee. Something she posted on X. Please watch.
How hard am I going to crack down on China? Well, here's a clue.
Marsha Blackburn worked with President Trump to take on communist China. As governor, Marsha will fight to protect Tennessee land from Chinese front companies.
Quick note, fortune cookies invented in Japan, adopted in California, then across the country, never in China. But anyway, Mark, this is trying to talk about a salient issue. It's not a non-issue, but sort of shorthanding it for those who are not up to speed.
Well, as Grace, your previous guest, so powerfully demonstrated, the concerns about what's happening in China, this is not even a partisan issue. This is a national issue that is
and communist China aspirations in America of all kinds.
Yes, absolutely. And
it cuts in Republican primaries for sure.
And if you're Marsha Blackburn or any candidate
or in a general election as well,
running for governor, this is a really good place on offense to be able to play, because as governor, it's less about national issues. It's more about what's going on in my backyard. And if there's concerns about Chinese economic impact, we've seen Marsha Blackburn go after Confucius Institutes throughout her career. Having China front and center as kind of the main.
And what are those Confucius Institutes?
Basically, the CCP funding university provisions on American college campuses to spread propaganda. But Marsha Blackburn being very acutely aware that this is actually a good, positive issue for Republicans and basically any lawmaker. Like, it should be a bipartisan, nonpartisan issue to try to go after China as much as you can.
And I think the broader point is Republicans need to find issues outside of what everyone else is talking about that have some salience, because affordability, the Trump of it all, a little bit dicey.
But even with on the affordability dynamic, if countries like China are using major economic levers in order to gain an edge over to us,
you can play there as well.
You can play there as well, yeah. So that works, and especially in Maine, where Susan Collins is going to win.
Okay, here we go. I want to talk about another Senate race in Texas.
Sure.
Something that Jasmine Crockett recently said about her primary race against James Tallarico, who is the current and existing and will be the nominee and is the nominee against Ken Paxton, the Republican. Play it.
You see, a lot of haters got a lot of things to say about me and my race and how I ran it, but the reality is that there was a lot of racist, not a lot, it was racist. It was a racist race. It is what it is, right? But we live in America, as y'all are celebrating 250, okay? We know what this country is.
This matters, Chuck, because she has yet to endorse and get on board with the Tallarico campaign. Is that problematic?
Look, we love Jasmine Crockett, and the day that he won the primary, and I worked for James Tallarico in full disclosure, James didn't go to the podium and thank his mama, who is a wonderful woman. He didn't come to the podium and thank Chuck Rocha or his amazing staff. The first thing he said is, I want to thank Jasmine Crockett. It was the first thing out of his mouth. That matters. Words matter. And then he didn't say, and we're going to work together. He said, I'm going to work to earn the support of her and her supporters. And ever since then, he's been working hard. Look, it's hard to lose an election. You've covered these elections. You've covered elections. And those scars run deep. But I think by the time we get to where we need to be, everybody's going to be together. But I understand there's still a lot of hurt feelings. But I'm telling you what James said the day of, which is we're going to be together, and I'm going to work hard, to get those votes.
3 polls in Texas show it an even race. Do you believe them?
I do. For the first time in American history, in a long time, and I've worked all the way back to Ann Richards when the state was blue, it's different than when Beto ran. And everybody's comparing it to Beto, who just lost by 2.6% because of this anxiety and because Republicans have had total control of our government for 31 years, and people are mad at all incumbents right now.
Mark, you've got 45 seconds to give me Texas, James Tallarico, Ken Paxton.
So with Texas, I still think Republicans win. It stays a red state. Donald Trump won it by more than 1.5 million votes. But the things that concerns me, and I try to raise for Republicans, within either elected office, donors, what have you, whoever listen to me, is that the intensity in terms of the primary vote, more people voted for Democrats in the primary, even though there was a heated primary between Paxton and Cornyn. Whereas in 2018, even when Beto O'Rourke, was new to the scene, Ted Cruz still had more people turn out in his primary. So Democratic voters are showing up right now, and that is
possibly a worrisome sign. Possibly.
And a lot to do with Latinos that voted for Donald Trump coming back.
Money can change that. Ads can change that. Turnout machines change that.
Mark Bednar, Chuck Rocha, I thank you very much. Happy Thursday, everyone. This is The Takeout. Relentlessly curious, reliably civil. I got to move fast, occasionally clever. Daily Report coming up next. I did it so fast.